coughing, sneezing, runny nose. Kids can get up to 10 viral illnesses every single year. So if you kept them at home every single time that happened, that would be a lot of missed school. So how do you decide, school or no school? We have Dr. Elizabeth Meade with Swedish Medical here with us this morning to answer that exact question. How do you know when to keep the kids at home?
Yeah, well, I think there's a few questions parents can ask. So one thing I say is, if your child needs medical attention, if they need to see a doctor, that's kind of an obvious one. But if they just have a mild illness, I think there's a couple good starting places for parents. So if you think that your child is so tired or so uncomfortable or just not feeling well that they're not going to get anything out of the school day, it probably doesn't make sense to send them and just have them be miserable. And then the second thing is, and this is especially important for younger kids, if the staff at your child's school or daycare is not going to be able to give them the care they need during the day, so if your child's needing a lot of suctioning of their nose or lots of frequent fluids because they're not able to really keep down meals, and you don't think that the staff can adequately do that during the day, that's another reason for them to stay home.
So if you decided that your child is sick, they need to stay home, do you have to take them to the doctor?
Not necessarily. So I think it's also important to know for parents that schools will often have their own specific requirements about when kids can come and when they have to stay home. So it may not always line up with the doctor's recommendations. They may be a little bit more strict at the school. So it's good to ask as a parent and make sure. But no, I think if your child has a mild illness, they're not having super high fevers, so anything under like about 102, they're acting okay otherwise, maybe they just have a little runny nose or a cough, it's fine to just keep them home and watch them typically.
And then how long do you keep them home? Can you trust your child to tell you when they feel better?
In most cases, yes. I mean, even fairly young kids can say, you know, if they're running around the house playing and saying, I want to go back to school, they're probably feeling well enough to go back to school. And so I think it's great to ask your kids. And then, you know, if they're drinking fine, they're eating okay, they seem like they're generally healthy, it's fine to send them back. If you kept your child home from school for the entire duration of every viral infection they got, they would not go to school from like November to March. So I think there are times where you have to say, okay, it's time to go back.
Okay, and what ailments are you looking for exactly?
So most viral infections are pretty harmless and they're going to get spread around in daycares and schools. If your child has something that's very contagious or dangerous, like measles or influenza, those are definitely reasons to stay home. And those sort of illnesses have kind of a definite time period where the doctor will say, okay, they can't go back for this many days. I think there are some bacterial infections that can be contagious, like strep throat or bacterial conjunctivitis, which is pink eye. And those things you want your kid to be on antibiotics for about 24 hours before they go back to the classroom.
Okay, and even the best kids, sometimes they don't want to take that test or they don't want to deal with that teacher on that day. How can you decipher the fakes?
It's hard. I mean, I think kids tend to feel a lot of emotional stress in really physical ways, so they may not even be making it up. Their tummy might really hurt or they might really have a headache because they're worried about something at school. But if you feel like, again, they're not having high fevers, they're well hydrated, they seem like their energy is okay, more often than not, it's okay to send them to school.
Okay, and I think we talk to you all the time, and one of the first things you say is wash your hands. You can never wash your hands too much.
Wash your hands.
What other things, though, can we, let parents know?
Teaching your child to cough into their elbow instead of into their hands is great, and even young kids can start to learn this. And if you're going to cough at home, try to make sure you do it that way in front of your children, because if they cough into their hands and then they touch everything, it's just as bad as coughing all over everything. And the other thing is for little kids, you know, try to keep them apart. Babies and little kids tend to kiss each other and kind of lick each other in the face, and that can really spread germs around. So for really little children, it may be more often that you're keeping them home than older kids.
Okay. Dr. Meade, thank you so much for being with us this morning. Thanks for that insight. And Brian, back to you.